Hello and welcome to another dialogue workshop. Just let me introduce myself. I am Mustafa Cenap Aydın, the director of Istotevere in Rome and the Sociology of Religion. And tonight I will be moderating this event and with Professor Francesco Zannini. Let me briefly introduce this program, and because it is part of a series of programs during the year, as you have already seen at the beginning, it's a dialogue workshop in which we are inviting experts with whom we are trying to offer an idea of how can we actually deal with interfaith, intercultural
beraber
dialogue
kültürler arası, dinler arası diyalog
cases in the area. And this program is coordinated by several institutions. First of all, our host dialogue platform from Brussels, Arco Forum from Madrid, Unione Harmonia from Lisbon, Portugal, Platform is from Netherlands, Platform de Paris from France, and Istotevere from Rome, Italy. And this tonight's event is entitled as Islam and the West, the case of Hizmet movement. We have a very distinguished expert of the area, Professor Dr. Francesco Zannini from LUMSA University of Rome. Before giving the floor to Professor Zannini, I would like to introduce him to you. And of course, it would not be enough, the time would not be sufficient to introduce the whole work of Professor Zannini in this limited of time, but let me give you a brief introduction of him. And then afterwards, you can just also Google him in order to have more information about his publications and many other successes in his academic career. As I told you at the beginning, at the moment, Professor Zannini is a professor of Arabic language and culture at LUMSA University at the Department of Law, Economy, Politics, and Modern Languages. But at the same time, he's also teaching as a master's in international relations at the same university. Before joining to the academic staff of LUMSA, Professor Zannini taught many years at the Pontifical Institute of Arabic and Islamic Studies, Pisae in Rome. This is the most distinguished, prestigious institution of the Vatican to study Islam and the Arabic culture and civilizations. Professor Zannini was one of the ordinary professors of full professors of this institution before joining to LUMSA. Very briefly, Professor Zannini's academic research always intertwined with a very range of, I will say, experiences in different parts of the Muslim world. He lived many years in Asia, especially in Bangladesh, but also around, having a very first-hand experience with the Muslim world, meeting not only the ordinary people of the country, but also very important, prestigious Sheikh Mudarrisin, very important leaders of the Muslim confraternities of the country. Professor Zannini, for his Arabic studies, also lived in Egypt. Also for his academic studies, he has been several times in the United States, especially Yale University. Professor Zannini's work mostly focusing on contemporary Islam, especially in Asia, but also his work is so much related to religion and state and religious freedom in Islamic countries. That's why, beside his academic work, he was several times invited by the Minister of Home Affairs in Italy to collaborate for the projects which are related to the Muslim communities in Italy. And I would like to just share with you very also rapidly some of his the publications that I told you beforehand. He published a book on Islam in Asia and secularism and Islam. And his recent, many other several articles in Italian, English, and Arabic. But his recent publication is very much related to tonight's subject. He recently published a book in Italian. Actually, it has become public sort of 2 weeks ago. This is directly related to Gülen movement and the very person of Fethullah Gülen. And this book is a long, I will say, journey of research, of reflection, of literature review. But I would like to leave the details of this book at the end of the presentation, and because I would like to ask some questions about this book. It is now in Italian, but we are also very much looking forward to reading it in English, Turkish, in many other languages. And as Professor Zannini was just telling me, maybe also in Arabic. Okay, before giving the floor Professor Zannini to talk about the case of Hizmet movement in the context of our reflections, the relations between Islam and the West, I would say is a very hot topic at the moment, looking at recent developments in France and elsewhere in Europe. More and more, we are focusing on Islam and Muslims in Europe, not only in the academic circus, but also in the policy making and the political arena, and as well as in the civil society. Before I would say just a few remarks that I would like to share with you. Please share your comments and questions and then the QA box so that we can just collect your questions. Of course, we will receive many questions. We will do our best to answer this question, to pass them to Professor Zannini, but please also be considerate about that. If there are too many questions, maybe we can't really respond them immediately at the moment. Maybe they could be also responded afterwards in a different fashion. Another thing, at the end of our meeting, this is the part of our tradition for this dialogue workshops, we will share with you a link in which you can give a feedback. We really appreciate this feedback from you because it really helps us to find out what can we do for the future, and also what can we find in our program to a better I will say context in which we can develop new subjects and programs for you. Okay, I have already arrived at the time allowed for me for the introduction, and now the floor is yours, Professor Zannini, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I think Dr. Chenapo and Dr. Bayrak for their kind invitation, and I thank you all for being present here. I'm very pleased, ladies and gentlemen, to discuss about the subjects on which I worked the last few years and in which I'm really deeply interested. This is the case of Hizmet movement, and particularly the inspirational figure of Muhammad Fethullah Gülen. In the last few years, there has been the appearance of several Muslim intellectuals that have started to express themselves on the topic of interreligious and multi-religious dialogue. In fact, many Muslims have discovered that the roots of dialogue can be found in the Quran itself. Muslims are asked to dialogue with people of other religions, and particularly with the Christian, in a pluralistic world. I quote a verse, of course, in English, but I could put in Arabic as well, but we have no time. If Allah had so willed, He would have made you a single people. The use in Arabic is Lao, which means the impossibility of doing something. Something.
Birçok Müslüman Firavun kökenlerinin Kur'an'da bulunabileceğini keşfetmiştir.
But He would have made you a single people, so He didn't want to make you a single people. But His plan is to test you in what He has given you. So strive as in a race in all virtues. The return is of you all is to Allah. Is He that will show you the truth of the matters in which you dispute. This is very important for a general vision of Islam and Islam relationship with other people and cultures. In the 11th century, 11th, 12th century, post-12th century, Asharastani, in the book Kitab al-Milal wa Nihal, written around 1127, 1128, presents the doctrinal point of view of all religions and philosophy, as well as the rich diversity of theological and juridical movements among the Muslims present in the early Islam. In fact, we witnessed there the encounter of the Muslim with other cultures and civilization, as well as an inter-exchange, at times peaceful, at times conflictual, of different vision of the Ummah that shows the pluralism has always been part, that pluralism has always been part of the Islamic heritage. This pluralism is clearly connected with one of the main characteristics of Islam and of the Muslim, which is the capacity of entering into dialogue with other traditions and cultures, with a great capacity of welcoming values and accepting local philosophy of life. This, for example, is something I tried to prove. When I published my book, Islam in Asia, from Caucasus to Thailand. How Islam inculturated, as we say nowadays, into the civilization which were accepted by the Muslim and renewed through the Muslim presence. In fact, since the first moments of expansion towards the North Africa, Europe, and Middle East, the Muslims were very busy more to assimilate than to destroy. And that common cliche that makes the Muslim barbarian who burn libraries is absolutely disavowed by the history of Islam. As we say nowadays, is a fake news. The first caliphs, in fact, did not destroy not even the institution of the Byzantines, but rather they assumed them in the new Islamic empire, leaving even sometimes Byzantine administrator in their position, as in the case of the Christian Sargon, father of St. John of Damascus, was kept in his institutional position under the Umayyad Caliphate. The history of Islam is full of example of dialogue with the Western culture, starting from the time when Muslims discovered the richness of the Greek traditions, which became the basis of their philosophy, theology, culture, and science. Averroes, Ibn Rushd, Ibn Sina, all the philosophers of Islam, as well as people of Kalam, they got the basis for their reasoning, the logical reasoning, mostly from Aristotelian and Plotinian books, which were translated through what I said now, a particular movement. Institutions such as the House of Wisdom, Baitul Hikmah, under the Abbasid Caliph Al-Ma'mun, which was established with the cooperation of many Syrian Christians, were centers of learning where Greek culture entered the Arab world through the translation movement, and then it was passed to the West, Al-Andalus, from Arabic to Latin. What we got early on Aristotle, we got mostly through the translation into Latin of Averroes' books brought to Paris, and which were the sources of the Summa Theologica of St. Thomas Aquinas. This period of history, or in the history of intercultural relations, often ignored or forgotten, can be considered a sort of golden age of creativity and intellectual sharing between Muslims and European Christians and Jews. But let's go to the modern concept of movements. As the researcher Thomas Olson stated, a central concern in social movement research over the last 4 years has been to explain why some people choose to participate in activism with others, the majority, while others, the majority, did not. The research is focused on secular red, green, and right activism, or to put it in slightly provocatively, research has focused on the kind of activism that scholars sympathize with. At the current juncture, however, there is a growing interest in Islamic activism within the movement field. The main issue is how the Muslim movements can be related to the progressive Western movements, traditionally populated by secular left-wing activists. Here's the big question to be addressed, is whether Islamic thought and Islamic movements can be truly modern. This implies the question of whether Islam and liberal democracy are compatible. Let us look at the recent history. In the 19th century, we witnessed the emerging of Muslim movements such as the Aligarh movement of Sayyid Ahmad Khan, whose particular contribution to the subject under discussion, based on the reflection on the plight of subcontinental Muslim in the situation post-1857, was to confine the notion of jihad to the obligation of defense of Muslim against religious oppression. He stressed that the fact that the Muslims have to share in governing the society and not to isolate. So it's another kind of jihad we have to use, not the against, but a jihad of understanding, not to isolate themselves, considering the surrounding world as Darul Harb, showing the inner modernity of Islam. There is a necessity of sharing values with the West through the English language. So, of course, the first who started, the first Muslim university, where the medium was the English language. The Tariqa-e-Muhammadiyya was founded by Sayyid Ahmad Berlevi, who lived in 1786 to 1831, whose philosophy was that only Islamic culture could be source of progress, and that is called maslaha by him. So you have this movement that continues the tradition of the Wahhabi. But at the same time, in the same area, particularly in Bengal, more socially oriented was the Faraizi movement founded by Haji Shariat Ali, 1781, 1840, who set himself the task of restoring the puritanical custom of the early rural Bengal, the Islamic rural Bengal. It's quite different from the modern fundamentalism. Its jihad was not intended to impose a religion, but was oriented to social welfare, to take the side of the exploited peasantry by landlords and indigo planters. We witness also the emerging of messianic movements, such as the Bahadin, started by Muhammad Ahmad ibn Abdullah, who lived 1944, 1885, the Mahadist revolution, which succeeded because effectively combined several appeals, the religious, economic, and cultural ones, under the charismatic leadership of Muhammad Ahmad ibn Abdullah. He was able to build a military force capable of defeating his enemies. Another relevant messianic movement is the Ahmadiyya, Qadian, founded by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad from Qadian, who in 1889 experienced a mystical urge which led him to declare himself to be the promised Mahdi or Messiah. His followers try to restore the pristinity, purity of Islam. This case was a big debate of the Muslim. The concept of Ghulam Mirza, or Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, was not to proclaim himself as a new prophet, but to say not to look too much ahead, to see the eschatological days, but start the eschatology in the daily life starting from now. That's why they call the leader the Messiah, not because he wants to be like Christ, but because they want to start, as the Christians say, the kingdom of God right now, not to expecting some miracles coming from outside. This is a big misunderstanding. people have about the Qadiani, and so they were rejected by some of the Muslim community. On the other way, they are really Sunni, and they, as I said, the followers try to restore the pristine purity of Islam, solve social and economical problems within the framework of their brotherhood, and promote peace and understanding among people. As Joshua Hendry clearly points out, in the post-colonial period, Muslim world saw the emergence of the ideology of social and cultural development, particularly in the Middle East and upper class and among the intellectual elites, who created a series of movements whose project was to de-Islamize Muslim society and to retake their capacity to make their own history. The main cultural religious movement was the one of Nahda of Jamaluddin al-Afghani, who, looking at the West, and particularly to the French Industrial Revolution and the French and the Industrial Revolution, analyzes the relationship of Islam with the cultural changes, and he asks the Muslim to come out of their ghetto and their backwardness. He calls for a modernization of the Muslim society and started an association of Muslim intellectuals called Al-Urwa Al-Wuthqa, a strong pact. To this is related to the so-called Manar movement, which finds its main expression in the commentary of the Quran, Tafsir al-Manar of Muhammad Abdu and Rashid Rida, written at the beginning of the last century, whose main principles are the reform of the Muslim world, going back to the origin, Salaf, with a different meaning from the one is used now by extremist, radical, fundamentalist Muslim, the renovation of the Arabic language, the recognition of the rights of people, democracy, human rights, the abandon of the falsification of Islam, superstition, the taqlid, so depending always, repeating the past, and particularly the taqlid or the madhab. So they look for a reform of the Sharia himself in order to cope with the Muslim world, for the welfare of the community and reconciliation between revelation and sciences. The quasi-Sufi movement, Tablighi Jamaat movement, founded by Muhammad Ilyas in India, voiced engagement with political issues, as is the tradition of the Chishtiya Tariqa, who was deadly against politics. The biggest enemy of Akbar was Mujaddid al-Fasani of the Tariqa, or the Chishti Tariqa, or advocacy of politics party, and foster a reform of the individual Muslim through the discovery of the inner spirituality of Islam. In the 20th century, the 20th century has also witnessed the emergence of fundamentalist movement, such the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin, founded by Hassan al-Banna, and whose main ideologist was Sayyid Qutb, who wrote the famous tafsir. The Jamaat-e-Islam of Abu Ba'ala al-Mawdudi, as well as the Shiite fundamentalism of Ayatollah Khomeini. Scusate la mia voce è un po' bassa. It's my voice is a bit low. The basic point of their ideology are the alternative to the present political, financial, and social system. The utopia referring to the golden age of Muhammad and Medina, the identity of Islam as a complete code of life. We would say, I don't know how you take this word, they are saying Islam über alles, which gives you the right idea of the position of the fundamentalist movement. The present day Islamist movements share with them the characteristics of being revolutionary and seek not reform, but a complete change in existing political system. The political arena is the most important arena, which depends also from a fundamentalist point of view, but the focus is really not on the Islamic principle, Islamic values, but on Islamic political vision, and then, of course, built as they want to build with it. They proclaim the necessity of taking action, jihad, to right what is wrong. They take in a wrong way the text of the Quran, Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy bil Munkar. Considering even the Muslim society and the existing governments as having lost their status of Muslim, and they're very oppressive against the minorities and the minority movements in Islam. This movement depicts an alien other to be opposed. Such alien forces are seen as having caused or at least contributed mightily to this Jahiliyyah, and they support those ostensibly Muslim rulers who must be overthrown. The goal to be attained in this struggle is the divinely mandated Islamic State, the delineation of which has been clearly set out in the sacred text and achieved in the time of Muhammad. It's quotation from the Cambridge History of Islam. So they shape Islam, they attribute them to Muhammad, and then they impose as a philosophical but
Ve
mostly
sonra bunu felsefi ama daha ziyade siyasi bir vizyon olarak empoze ediyorlar. Bu hareketlerin bir bireyiyle olan ilişkileri de genelde çok serttir. Ve devlete ve özellikle de Müslüman olmayan devletlere karşı çok farklı tutumlara sahipler. Bu hareketler tutumları, ideolojileri ve militanlıklarıyla Samuel Huntington'un medeniyetler çatışması tezini meşrulaştırmaktadırlar. Joshua Hendrick gibi bazı akademisyenler için Batı karşıtı İslami köktencilik aslında tepkisel etnomilliyetçiliğin sonucu değil, daha ziyade eşitsiz ekonomik gelişmenin sonucudur. Tarihsel olarak böylesi bir eşitsizlik söylemsel bir boşluk yaratmıştır. Ve ümmet dini uyanışı modern Müslüman dünyasında sosyal mücadele için bir kimlik, bir amaç ve çok çeşitli yöntemler sağlamıştır. Bununla birlikte bu tepkiyi klasik modernist veya küresel cihatçı veya sivil kozmopolit olarak sınıflandırabiliriz. Ama burada çok farklı yöntemler görüyoruz. Neden bu farklar var? Çünkü bu kişiler, bu hareketler İslam'ın kutsal bileşenlerini günlük hayatla daha başarılı veya daha başarısız bir şekilde uyumlu hale getirebiliyorlar. Bu uyumlu hale getirme yetenekleri farklı oluyor. Evet, bu bağlamda küresel cihatçılık Müslüman kökten dinci ideolojisinin en şiddetli, en yaygın şeklidir. Ve bu kökten dinci ideolojiler kendi Müslüman kardeşlerini, kendi Müslümanlarını bile kafir veya mürted olarak değerlendirebiliyorlar. Onlara karşı bile şiddeti öngörebiliyorlar. Bu hareketler Müslüman olmayanları da, Müslüman olanları da İslam düşmanı olarak sayabiliyorlar. Ve Müslümanları ve gayrimüslimleri ayrım gözetmeksizin katledebiliyorlar. Diğer taraftan Müslüman modernist hareketler var. Bu hareketleri Orta Doğu'dan Güney Asya'ya kadar görebiliyoruz. Bu hareketler İslam'ın ilke ve ideallerini yeniden yorumluyorlar, yeniden uyguluyorlar. Bu şekilde Avrupa'nın ve modern hayatın şartlarına yeni çözümler formüle etmeye çalışıyorlar. Bu şekilde İslam inancını demokrasi, haklar, milliyetçilik, akılcılık, bilim, eşitlik ve ilerleme gibi modern Batı değerleriyle uzlaştırmaya çalışıyorlar. Bu hareketler 19. yüzyılda hızlı ve dinamik bir şekilde Avrupa sömürgeciliğine bir yanıt olarak ortaya çıktılar. Ve aslında şöyle diyebiliriz, sömürgecilik bu açıdan işe yaradı. Müslümanların yenilenmesine ilham verdi. Onları modern Avrupa kültürleri ve ideolojileriyle temas ettiren modernizm fikrini ortaya attı. Evet, bu kısmı geçeyim. Evet, siyasi araştırmacı Olivier Roy şöyle demiştir. İslamcıların çoğu yerde devlet iktidarını ele geçirmede başarısız olmuşlardır. Evet, İslamcılar çoğu yerde devlet iktidarını ele geçirmekte başarısız olmaları nedeniyle bir post-İslamcılık dönemi başlamıştır. Olivier Roy şöyle demiştir. Neo köktenciler yani bireyin İslamileştirmesiyle ilgilenen Müslümanlar şimdi yükseliştedirler. Benzer bir yorum Fransız siyaset bilimci Gilles Kepel'den de duyulur. Birçok Pasifik Müslüman hareketi vardır. Profesör Thomas Michel'in de vurguladığı gibi bu pasifist Müslüman hareketler arasında 20. yüzyıl Kürt-Türk düşünürü Said Nursi'nin Risale-i Nur'unu temel alan 9 milyona yakın öğrencisinden oluşan güçlü küresel ağ yer alır. Diğer taraftan Aman vardır yani Asya Müslüman Eylem Ağı. Bu ağın içinde 18'den fazla Asya ülkesinden üye bulunur ve bunlar çeşitli sosyal projelerle, konularla ilgilenirler. Bu bahsettiğim 3 hareketten hiçbiri kendi gruplarını pasifist veya şiddet içermeyen veya barışçıl olarak tanımlamaz. Onlara sorarsanız bu hareketler, bu gruplar sadece İslamidir. Ve İslami olduklarından doğal olarak dünyada barış, adalet ve şiddet içermeyen toplumsal değişim aracı olmayı amaçlarlar. Bu İslam'ın doğası gereğidir. Bir de hizmet vardır. Yani çağdaş Türk bilgini Fethullah Gülen'in fikirlerine odaklanan eğitim ve kültür topluluğu hizmet. Tabii başka yerel örgütler, hareketler de vardır. Mesela Zahmavatiya ve Natladır Ulama'nın hareketleri. Evet ama şimdi Gülen hareketine geçelim. Bediüzzaman Said Nursi şöyle demiştir, şeytan ve siyasetten Allah'a sığınırım diye haykırmıştır. Ve aynen onun gibi Gülen de sanki siyaseti bazen şeytanın işi olarak görüyor. Fakat Gülen, İslam'ın alternatif bir siyaset modeli içerdiğine inanıyor mu? Kesinlikle hayır. Açıkça şöyle der. İslam, belirli bir sabit, değişmez hükümet biçimi önermez. Veya, affedersiniz, evet, İslam belirli bir değişmez hükümet biçimi önermez veya böylesi bir sistemi şekillendirme girişiminde bulunmaz. Bunun yerine İslam, hükümetin genel karakterini yönlendiren temel ilkeleri oluşturur ve hükümetin türünü ve biçimini zamana ve koşullara göre seçmeyi halka bırakır. Evet, burada bütünleştirici bir ideoloji olarak İslam'ı görüyoruz. Bu İslam görüşü, Fethullah Gülen'in bu İslam görüşü, hukukun üstünlüğünü destekler ve toplumun her kesimine yönelik baskıyı açıkça reddeder. Aynı zamanda toplumun iyileştirilmesi için çoğunun görüşüne uygun gerekli eylemleri teşvik eder. Daha ılımlı bir yol izleyenler, İslam'ı bir ideoloji olarak değil, demokrasinin tamamlayıcısı olarak tanıtmanın daha yararlı olacağına inanırlar. Ve Fethullah Gülen şöyle der, İslam'ın insanların manevi tatmin gibi derin ihtiyaçlarına da cevap vererek demokrasiyi zenginleştirebileceğine inanıyorum. Ve bu manevi tatmin ihtiyacı ancak Allah'ı anarak yerine getirilebilir. Gülen'in İslamcılığı reddi, İslamcıların kutsal yazılarda siyasi rehberlik bulduklarını iddia ettikleri değerlendirmesine dayanmaktadır. Gülen'e göre kutsal yazılarda siyasi rehberlik bulma iddiası, imanlı kişinin kutsal kitaba yaklaşımını tehlikeli bir şekilde çarpıtır. Gülen şöyle der, Kur'an, ilahi yaratılıştan doğmuş, görünmeyeni, görüneni ve dünyayı yorumlayan evren kitabının bir tercümesidir. Kur'an, Kur'an ilahi isimlerin yeryüzündeki ve göklerdeki yansımalarının açıklamasıdır. İslam dünyasının çeşitli sorunları için bir reçetedir. Bu hayatta ve gelecek hayatta mutluluk için bir rehberdir. Böylesi bir kitap, siyasi söylem düzeyine indirgenmemeli. Böylesi bir kitap, siyaset teorileri veya devlet biçimleri hakkında bir kitap olarak görünmemelidir. Evet, bu Gülen'in sözlerini atıfta bulundum. Son yıllarda İslam ve toplumsal cinsiyet üzerine yazanlar Genellikle Müslüman ülkelerde kadın, cinsiyet, aile, kadın bedeni ve cinselliğin çağdaşlık ve ilgili tartışmaların ana konusu haline geldiğini işaret ettiler. Aynı zamanda dünyanın ahlaki yenilenme projelerinde de İslamcılar bu konularla yakından ilgilenmektedirler. Evet, İslami feminizm denen bu yeni fenomen hem akademik çevrelerden hem de medyadan çok ilgi görmüştür. Ella Shoat bu konular üzerine birçok çalışma yapmıştır. Alan çalışmaları, toplumsal cinsiyet çalışmaları ve bilginin kartografileri adlı çalışmasında şöyle demiştir. Çok kültürlü, ulus ötesi feminizmin karşılaştığı zorluklardan biri, teorilerin ve eylemlerin bir bağlamdan diğerine tercüme edilmesidir. Bir Arap-Müslüman bağlamında feminizm genellikle batılı bir ithalat olarak kınanır. Oysa Arap-Müslüman kadınlar cinsiyet mücadelesinin konularını, içeriğini kendileri yorumlarlar. Deneyim, özgünlük ve özgürlük kavramlarını eleştirecek post yapısalcı bir perspektif yerleştirmenin ne anlama geldiğini kendilerini tartışırlar. Evet, Gülen hareketinde de kadının rolü konusunda derinlemesine araştırma yapan Helen Rose Ebau şöyle der. Hem Türkiye'de hem de Houston, Texas'ta Gülen hareketinin eleştirmenleri hareket içindeki kadınların itaatkar olması gerektiğini, geleneksel çocuk yetiştirme ve eve bakma rollerini yerine getirmesi beklendiğini, başörtüsü takmaya teşvik edildiğini, erkeklerle sosyal etkileşimden ve kamu liderliği rollerinden caydırıldığını söylerler diyor. Ancak bu böyle değildir diyor. Helen Rose Ebau'nun Türkiye'de ve ABD'de kadınlarla yaptığı görüşmelerde çok büyük bir farkındalığa ulaştığını söyler. Hem hareket içinde, yani bu kadınlara hem hareket içinde nasıl davranıldığına, hem bu konulardaki yargılarda hem hareket faaliyetlerinde kadınların oynadığı roller açısından kadınlar arasında çok çeşitlilik gözlemlendiğini anlatır. Kadınların rolü çok farklı şekillerde yorumlanır, çok farklı şekillerde uygulanır der. Ben şimdi kendi bir kişisel deneyimime atıfta bulunayım. Fas'ta Gülen hareketi araştırmam sırasında Rabat'taydım ve orada Dil ve Kültür Merkezi Nilüfer'de kendini öğretmenliğe adamış bir gazeteciyle tanıştım. Ve bu kişi bana şöyle dedi. Gülen'in kitaplarını okuduktan ve hareket üyeleriyle tanıştıktan sonra bu hanım toplumda ve özellikle de İslam dünyasında kadının rolünün önemi konusunda çok şey öğrendiğini söyledi. Ve Fethullah Gülen'in öğretileri kadın olarak rolümü, Fethullah Gülen'in öğretileri kadın olarak rolümü yeniden keşfetmeme ve özgüvenimde büyümeme yardımcı oldu, dedi. Hatta beni günaha davet eden bir iblis olarak gören Müslüman erkekler ile yüzleşmeye cüret ettim. Buna cesaret ettim. Bizler gerçek birer Müslüman olmalıyız. Fethullah Gülen'in öğretilerini hatırlamalıyız. Manevi ve sosyal alanlarda birlikte çalışmalıyız. Kadınların dini otoriteleri Ulemayla nasıl yüzleştiğini anlattı ama size bunu anlatamam şimdi. Evet, bu kadınların dini otoriteleri, bu sözde din adamlarının, rical dini eleştirebileceklerini bilmeliyiz. Ve İngilizce'de din erkekleri denir. Ve bu din erkekleri ifadesi zaten başlı başına bir sorundur. Niçin sadece erkekler olsun dinde? Neyse ki İslam bu sorunun üstesinden gelmiştir. Ve Çin'de birçok teoloji öğretmeni var ve bunların bir çoğunluğu kadın. Evet, bir de tabii çatışma ve diyalog sorunu var. Fethullah Gülen, Küresel Bir Sevgi ve Hoşgörü Medeniyetine Doğru adlı kitabında bize bir davette bulunur. İslam'ın gerçekte neyle ilgili olduğunu anlamak için gayrimüslimleri ön yargı, şüphe ve yarı gerçeklerin ötesine geçmeye davet eder. Evet, İslam hakkındaki bilgisi günlük gazetelerin manşetleriyle sınırlı olan biri,
The Islamic religion teaches terrorism, suicide, attacks, oppression of women, and hatred for outside community. Fethullah Gülen, in this subject, released a press declaration.
ABD'ye yönelik 11 Eylül terörist saldırılarını kınayan bir basın bildirisi yayınlamıştı. Ve Gülen bu saldırıları dünya barışına büyük bir darbe olarak betimlemişti. Ve imanlıların itibarını haksız yere lekelediğini söylemişti. Bunun Müslümanlar tarafından değil, kendilerine Müslüman diyen kişiler tarafından yapıldığını anlatmıştı. Terör asla İslam, bunları Gülen söylüyor. Terör asla İslam adına veya herhangi bir İslami amaç uğruna kullanılamaz. Bir terörist Müslüman olamaz. Ve bir Müslüman terörist olamaz. Tabii bir devlet başkanı kendisi terörist biliyor bunun. İsmen söylemeyeyim ama herkes kimden bahsettiğimi anlıyordur.
The representative of symbol of peace, welfare, and prosperity.
Ve iyiliğin temsilcisi ve simgesi olabilir.
But what can free us from the factors of this inhumanity?
Ama dünyayı, bizleri bu insanlık dışı hareketlerden, bu insanlık dışı ruhtan ne kurtaracak? Fethullah Gülen sadece Müslümanlardan bahsetmez, aynı zamanda bütün dünya insanlarına bahseder. Ben şahsen Müslüman değilim. Ama Fethullah Gülen'in kitaplarını, makalelerini okurken gerçekten çok büyük bir manevi zenginliğe eriştiğimi hissediyorum. Fethullah Gülen'in hayali her zaman daha genç bir nesil olmuştur. Entelektüel aydınlanmayı, saf maneviyat, bilgelik ve sürekli aktivizmle birleştirecek bir altın nesil olmuştur. Bu gelecek dünyasının gerçek nesli olacaktır. Bu gelecek dünyasının vizyonu Fethullah Gülen'in felsefesinin önemli bir unsurudur. Kendisi modern toplumumuzun ve küresel ekonominin derin bir dönüşümünü aramaktadır. Bu dönüşüm modernitenin perspektiflerini derin bir tarihsel bilinçle bir araya getiren bir eğitim sistemine erişimi olan elit kesimin içsel değişimine dayanacaktır. geçmişi hatırlamak ve moderniteye, geleceğe açık olmak. Bu şekilde hepsini bir araya getireceğiz. Yahudi Şava'yı hatırlayarak, bunu asla unutmayarak ancak daha iyi bir gelecek, daha iyi bir dünya oluşturabiliriz. Ve bu bütün geçmiş zulümler için geçerlidir. Evet, Gülen eğitim yoluyla toplumun bilişsel dönüşümüne inanır. Ve bu kavramı hatta şiirsel bir şekilde ifade eder. Sağlam şekilde düşünme yetkisinden yoksun, tereddüt halindeki kitleler arasından yeni bir insan türü doğacaktır. Akla ve tecrübeye eşit şekilde güvenecek, eşit derecede güvenecek, vicdana ve ilhama eşit derecede önem verecektir. Bu kişi her şeyde mükemmeli arayacaktır. Bu dünya ile öteki dünya, gelecek dünya arasındaki dengeyi kuracak ve kalbi akılla evlendirecektir. Bu gibi insanların doğması kolay olmayacaktır. Tüm doğumlar sancılıdır. Ancak bu kutsanmış doğumlar gerçekleşecektir ve dünyaya yeni parlak bir nesil sağlayacaktır. Nasıl yağmur yavaş yavaş toplanan bulutlardan dökülürse ve su yer altına sızılır, oradan yeniden yağmur olup üstümüze dökülürse, bir günde bu yeni kuşağın çiçekleri aramızda belirecektir. Ruhlarımızın Heykeli, İslam Düşüncesinde ve Aktivizmde Canlanma adlı kitabında Gülen kendi bir yaşam felsefesi önerir. Evet, bunun İngilizce tercümesi ne yazık ki çok iyi yapılmamıştır. Türkçe başlığı çok daha güzel bu kitap.
Proposes his philosophy of life by saying, some live without thinking, only some think, but they don't put their thoughts into practice. However, we have an obligation to live and
Ancak
think.
bizim bir sorumluluğumuz var. Yaşarken yaşama ve düşünme. Giderek daha fazla kombinasyon üretme. Düşünceye daha çok ve daha çeşitli yaklaşımlar geliştirme sorumluluğumuz var. Evet, burada Gülen'in düşüncesinde kahraman fikri çok önemlidir. Maneviyat kahramanları fikri çok önemlidir. Ve Gülen bu kahramanları İslam'ın dışında da tanır. Onları, bu kahramanları nasıl tanımlarsanız tanımlayın der. Bu kahramanların eski çağlardan beri var oldukları bir gerçektir. Narin ve zarif danteller gibi tarihe dokunan aydınlanmış insanlar her zaman bu yüksek ruhlar arasından yetiştirilmiştir. Birer dinden ziyade felsefi sistemlere benzeyen Brahmanizm, Budizm, Konfüçyüslük, Taoizm ve Zerdüştlük bu tür maneviyat kahramanlarının insanlığa armağanıdır der. Evet, Allah bize bu kahramanları bir armağan olarak vermiştir. İnsanlığa bir armağan etmiştir. Yani burada bir sınırlama yoktur. Müslüman olabilir veya herhangi başka bir dinden olabilir. Aslında ancak umut ile mevcut krizin karanlığında ışığı görebiliriz. Yeni bir nesile ümit bağlamalıyız. Çünkü bu yeni nesil birer peygamber olacaktır. Yani devamı olacaktır. Hepsinden önce Hazreti Muhammed'in devamı olacaklardır. Ve sonuç olarak Her biri birer sosyal ve manevi liderdir. Her biri yeni bir erkek ve kadın modelidir. Bu kişiler dış etkilerden bağımsız, diğer insanlardan bağımsız olarak yaşayabilecek bütünlük sahibi bireyler olacaklardır. Düşünecekler, araştıracaklar, inanacaklar ve manevi zevkle dolup taşacaklardır. Kendi dünyalarını inşa ederken modern imkanlardan tam anlamıyla yararlanacak ve bu sırada geleneksel ve manevi değerlerini de ihmal etmeyeceklerdir. Evet, gelenekler çok önemli. Gelenekler kilittir. Fethullah Gülen'in düşüncesini araştırdığımızda geleneği asla unutmamalıyız. Gelenek ve modernite daima el ele ilerler. Abartmak istemiyorum. Ama Hristiyanlar, ben bir Hristiyanım. Francesco olarak evet geleneklere çok bağlıyım. Ama moderniteyi de kesinlikle destekliyorum.
I have to do at this point. Gülen also is on that in the same stream. Will individuals will take while making the first use of modern facility, they will not neglect their traditional and spiritual values. Only a few minutes have I finished. In building their own world. They are the ones that Gülen calls people of heart, the heroes of both spiritualism and meaning. Another point that will jump now, we only say a few words, is that this can be achieved only through education. In Fethullah Gülen world's vision, the lack of knowledge, as it was for Said Nursi, the lack of knowledge is the main source of evil that afflicts the entire mankind. And only through a proper education where science are not separated from religion, this evil may be defeated. I don't go on with a quotation. Education, in fact, for Fethullah Gülen is not simply teaching or transmitting knowledge. It is a way to put an end to the evil of the world. For Fethullah Gülen, there is also another field in which he worked and the movement works, the interreligious dialogue. For Fethullah Gülen, the diversity of religion is like a symphony of God's blessing and mercy, brought together in a collaborative unity. In fact, just a minute, I have to drink something. Fethullah Gülen, God wants me to end the speech. That's why he puts that. In Fethullah, believes that diversity is a necessary and is a necessity, and different beliefs, races, custom, and tradition will continue to coexist in this global village. Naturally, I could speak a bit about the different groups and movements from Holland to Rome to Far East, but I will end with something very interesting. For example, I refer to the Northern Ireland Dialogue Society. This is interesting because this group of the Hizmet did not work to reconcile Christian and Muslim, but involved itself in reconciling, in helping the reconciliation between Catholic and Protestant. So it's a service the Muslim community, and this Hizmet is given to the Christian community, not with any desire of recruiting people on having some advantages for their position. I will conclude with some word, a very important word of Fethullah Gulen. I think you give me a few minutes. The potential significance of Muslim movements rooted in the traditional Islam and open to modernity as Hizmet success should be their success should be crucial for intellectual and interreligious understanding between Islam and the West, as well as for the sake of peace in the entire world. In fact, the many teachers, thinkers, and activists of such movements will already be meditating on how they should have behaved to ensure future progress towards new culture of peace on the earth. This can be operated according through Fethullah Gulen, through the compassion. There is a real hymn to compassion I want to read now. Everything speaks of compassion and promises compassion, is a word of Fethullah Gulen. Because of this, the universe can be considered a symphony of compassion. And all kinds of voices proclaim compassion, so that it is impossible not to be aware of it. It is impossible not to feel the wide mercy encircling everything. How unfortunate are the souls who do not perceive this. A person has a responsibility to show compassion to all living beings as a requirement of being human. The more a person displays compassion, the more exalted she or he becomes, while the more she or he resorts to wrongdoing, oppression, and cruelty, the more she or he is disgraced and humiliated, becoming a shame for humanity. We hear from the Prophet, these are words of Fethullah Gulen, of the truth that the prostitute went to paradise because out of compassion she gave water to a poor dog dying of thirst, while another woman was considered to was condemned to the torments of hell because she left a cat to die of hunger. Mercy begets mercy. With this word of Fethullah Gulen, I conclude my speech. Thank you for your patience in listening to me.
Thank you very much, Professor Zannini. It was a very illuminating lecture in which I just try to understand, how shall we approach to Gülen movement, especially, while analyzing Islam in different contexts of the world, especially in dialogue with modernization, westernization, and that was actually very eye-opening for us, especially when you are just comparing and contrasting different experiences around the world, how different Muslim groups in different cultural and national contexts are responding to the challenges of westernization and the secularization and modernization. And also, I really appreciated, that you brought the approach of Joshua Hendricks, Helen Rose Ibo, and also Olivier Roy, scholars who had a very special attention to the place of Islam in the modern world, in the Western countries. Again, thank you very much for this very enriching lecture. We have some questions. We have very limited time, but as a moderator, I would like to just steal a little bit of time before moving to the questions. There's so many questions. We will respond on a few of them most probably. At the beginning, I was talking about the new book, the new publication. I kindly ask you to show the new book to our audience, which are greeting you. I'm watching here in the YouTube chat box people from Portugal, Netherlands, Italy, France, in their native tongue. They are, greeting you, and they just make very nice, interesting comments for your conference. Of course, also since everything is simultaneously translated into Turkish, there are also so many compliments and comments in Turkish language too. Okay, now I would like to ask, maybe I'll ask you some questions together, and maybe you can just respond them together. That will be an approach. A very first question came from a friend, I guess, from Mustafa Göktaş, and he's asked the questions. When we are talking about dialogue, we are usually concerned about Islam and Christianity. Why don't we see more and more Jews in this dialogue? Why Jews are absent when we are talking about interfaith dialogue? Again, another question I'm adding to that. What do you think about the intellectual capacity and capability of the Hizmet movement and its followers to cooperate and work together with Christian believers to address the compelling challenges like discrimination, suppression, inequality, so that core values of both religions, human diligence, world peace, compassion, and love prevail? This is a question from Sabri Al-Yakut. I have also some other questions, anonymous questions, but maybe I can add a third one, and then I give you the floor. This is a sort of a very personal question to you. One of the listeners asking you, how did you come across to Hizmet movement, and how would you say, based on your research, how would you assess a vision, a future of Hizmet movement? Okay, these were the first three questions that I would like to share with you. Floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mustafa. The first question, I think through my lecture, I've explained as far as the Hizmet movement. The Hizmet movement is open to everybody. What Fethullah Gülen has said regarded not even Christian and Jews and Muslim, but even Buddhist, Confucianist, etc. So if we, as a Christian or you as a Muslim, appreciate each other, we put in action a mechanism by which you start appreciating the other, under quotes. And so you open to all religion. And of course, the Jews are the closest to us because we have in common some part of our traditions. This way, I don't know whether I answer exactly, but that's just the idea. As a Christian say, how is my approach to dialogue? Dr. Mustafa can say a different approach, but the origin may be different, but the spirit is the same. You can base on the Quran, I can base on the Bible, but the word that we are in a pluralistic world and we have to be open to each other is in common. The cooperation, this is something which is clear from the vision of Fethullah Gulen, together with the first aspect. Fethullah Gulen started himself dialogue at all levels, terms of the Association of Writers, etc., at all levels in Turkey. Started a dialogue between Turks and Kurds, Christian and Muslims and Jews, Orthodox and Christian, he himself personally. And so I think Hizmet, as I proved in my book, is continuing in this line. And there is an important thing, an important aspect with I think is relevant, is that when I visited, because my book is not only out of what I studied of the books and on the book, on the books of Gulen, his speeches, and on the books on him. But also my personal experience in dialogue with people. Very little students of the Hizmet school talk about Gulen, but all of them talk about the spirit of Gulen. So it's a leadership that don't want to be the head of a movement. He himself is worried about that, but wants to be an inspiration through this reinterpretation of the Quran for Muslim and non-Muslim. I myself was inspired. I didn't convert to Islam, neither I joined the Hizmet. I wrote a book because I wanted to read the book. Because after reading that, I thought that this book would be a service for our community, lay community, Christian community, Jewish community, Muslim community, Buddhist who are in Italy, and then if you translate, maybe at the service of other communities as well. The last was about, can you repeat me the last, because I wrote quickly. The last question.
The last question was actually rated, how do you have a vision, a feature of Hizmet movement? That was...
Okay. I think what happened in Turkey does not stop the movement. Usually, as a Christian experience, persecution makes us make us stronger. The Christian were almost were really attacked by an empire who wanted to destroy them, but the Christian raised. And not because they took power, because they had problem in themselves, but because of the suffering of a certain moment, being a large vision of the world, they continue to go on. And I think for the Hizmet is even more easier in the sense that it's not an organization. Dr. Mustafa can agree on that. It's not an organization with a framework, a pyramid as a pyramid on the top, Gulen that gives order, and is a community of people inspired that through the common inspiration they get together. And that's the real sense by which nobody can attack you. Nobody can destroy you. Because if you attack in one place, in another place, they will come up. Because it is a spirit, is a vision that goes on and attracts people. And when people have vision, nobody can defeat it. I mean, they can defeat materially, but not certainly spiritually, and certainly. So I see in spite of all the problems you have now, I understand the problem Hizmet has to face now. I think because of the inspiration and this freedom not being tied with an organization who can be destroyed, that makes the future, particularly if you follow the values Fethullah Gulen has promoted, if you follow these values, I think you can continue and have continued small groups organize themselves. Particularly, I think that will be the most difficult part because of some obstacle, political obstacle, to go back to the organization of educational centers and training. This is very important, schools, etc., because it's this way you can educate Muslim and Christians and other Jewish and Buddhist and everybody in Thailand. I think there are also Buddhists who are attending your school. You can help them to be real human beings. That the golden generation, he doesn't talk about Muslim when Fethullah Gulen talks about golden generation. He talks about the youth, no matter to which religion they belong. So the future of Hizmet is not tied to an organization who can be destroyed, but to a spirit from which a series of common links started, which cannot be easily destroyed. This is my point of view.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Zannini. Also, I'm sure you are very exhausted, but now it's my turn.
Because of the voice, for the rest, I'm full of life.
I understand. Yes, today is not the one of the best days in Rome. We are so much used to have sunny weather. Strange enough, we are in mid of April, and we have a great weather today. Sort of that. The only thing what I would like just to share with you for the last few minutes is my turn to ask you your patience. There are several questions, but I guess they are sort of converge to each other, especially questions who are coming from France. As you know, Muslims living in France, and including Muslims, who are inspired by Hizmet movement, are sort of very concerned about the, on the one hand, the extremisms, far right and the religious extremism, unfortunately, are very present at the moment, not only in France, in different parts of Europe. And this new legislation is coming about, and some political parties who are abusing this clash of extremisms in France. And they ask your opinion, and departing from your research about Hizmet movement, what would be the behavior of people who are inspired by Hizmet movement in this difficult time of, I will say, the presence of Muslims in Europe? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it's not an easy question. They should give a lecture on that and distinguish various experts. I think at the moment in Europe we have a sort of schizophrenia. People who, for political reason, support the Muslim in general, and other people for political reason want to destroy the Muslim or put serial boundaries to their behavior, etc. I think if all the Muslims in Italy and in Europe, as you know, I belong to this committee for Islam in Italy, the ministry, tries to promote the basic values that inspired the constitution of many of European countries, which are not against Islam. I don't say the local law that will, and help the Muslim to recall to this origin of the nations in Europe and the birth of Europe in itself as community of nations, I think this can help a lot to the Muslim to survive, to progress, and to advance in this period where anti-Muslim sort of what they call Islamophobia, anti-Muslim attitude is dominated. The big dangerous, and that's why I think if Hizmet sticks to what Gülen said, and other Muslim accept what he said, not only the element of tolerance, but the element of accepting the other would be the basis to solve all these problems. Is a sort of spiritual suggestion, not a political one, but this can enter even in the political field. When you start dialogue with other Muslim communities, and this is not easy. Dr. Mustafa knows in Italy it's not easy. And at the same time, by respecting, that's why we wrote the famous chart of values at a certain point in the past, and to respect the basic elements of the constitutions, which are neither against Islam nor against Christianity, I think something can be done. I'm not a politician, not a sociologist, so I cannot give you a technical way. But I think what Fethullah Gülen says is very important. This new generation is a new generation of love, tolerance, compassion, and when you say compassion, I would say even sympathy, seeing in the other, in the Christian and in the Muslim, something that belongs to yourself. Whenever there is an act of terrorism, even against the Christian, in my heart, you know what, which voice comes? Poor Muslim. They will have suffered because of these rascals have done that. So you have to enter in the spirit of the others. And that will, of course, if you talk about France, there is a big limitation of the banlieue, the lack of job, the ghetto position, go to Marseille, and the different groups who are making ghetto among themselves. So it's a rather complicated situation. In Italy, is a bit better, but not so better, because it's very difficult also to put the Muslim together, and then even Christian, Muslim, and Jews working together. But if we stuck to the basic values, we can find that the Western society is not enemy to Islam, no matter of the Lepanto battles, no matter of whatever happened in the past, and no matter what some of our politicians say, the majority of people are open. As I wrote in my first book published, you have seen in the Ahmad, il mio vicino di casa. Ahmad, my neighbor. Ask any Italian about the Muslim, they will say, "Oh, dangerous people." Ask about Ahmed, who lives nearby. I said, "Oh no, but he's a good person." And that's what I think in general of the European attitude.
Thank you very much, Professor Zannini. There are so many other questions, and in YouTube, I'm very, very grateful for these questions, because these questions actually show the great interest in this lecture. I'm sure we will have more and more dialogues with you, especially concerning your new book. We are actually really looking forward to reading it in different languages. And I was not mentioning about the French translation. but people from France, they would like to read it also in French. But unfortunately, we
I'll be very pleased.
we don't have enough time to, answer other questions. At this point, I would like to wrap up and just arrive to the conclusion of this, very lovely evening. But just, our friends and the audience who already just only seen us, me and Professor Zannini, but I would like to thank you to all the team that do really hard work. I just did work really hard to, achieve this, especially Mehmet, Şeyma, Ümit, Rıdvan, but a very heartfelt thanks and to our translator, Başak. It was a very great effort, to translate the whole event to a very interested audience of Turkish language. And again, I would like to thank you to all of you in the name of Dialogue Platform from Brussels, Belgium, ARCO from Madrid, União Harmonia from Lisbon, Portugal, Platform is from Netherlands, Platform de Paris from France, and Isto TVR from Rome, Italy. And in this occasion, I would like to wish all Muslim friends a very holy Ramadan, and also my, again, heartfelt greetings to our Christian friends who are still living the Easter time until Pentecost, and also Christian Orthodox friends who are in Lent and still waiting for the Easter on 2nd of May.
I would say before you end, Ramadan Kareem.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Zannini, and thank you for your participation, who already watch us in different social media channels. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. It was a pleasure for me.